And that is something that we as Iron Agers have ahead of us. That's kind of a mountain to climb. Is creating something that is three-dimensional enough to be engaging to as many readers as possible in order to build that fan base that we're looking for, without pigeonholing ourselves too much in the trope. A lot of that happens, especially with pulp style writing. There's uh, Mark Twain always comes to mind when anybody talks about this stuff, because he had a memorable quote that I'm going to bastardize and trying to interpret it, but basically the gist of it is that there's no such thing as a new story. And what we do as creators is put the concept into a kaleidoscope and twist it around just enough that it's a little bit different. And then we try to share it with the world. And that's what you want to do. Your take on this thing that everybody loves is fine, as long as it's not exactly like the same thing that's already out there.
Once again, why branding is so important as an author. Because yes, if we go into this knowing that the stories are being retold over and over again, like that's how it works. We get it. We all sign on and we're okay with that. But you need to bring part of yourself. You need to bring something to the table that is going to make it uniquely you and feel uniquely you. And for me, like that's characterization. Like that's, why is Stephen King lasted as long as Stephen King has? Because Stephen King, for all of his faults, he does write compelling characters that you dive into and you feel them. I don't know if anybody's read the Mr. Mercedes or the books that follow that in that series, talking about like a mainstream author. The reason you read those books has jack shit to do with the story. Like all of his stories, I can go and watch people being killed and weird sci-fi stuff happen. The things that made those so successful and so interesting is that like that the main character, the cop, you connect with him. Like you're like, it's an old guy. He's kind of past his prime, been tossed in this situation where he's not ready for it, because who's the hell is ever ready for this, and somehow manages to persevere. But that's the human condition right there. That's the thing that really makes it work, is that you feel like, oh God, how many things have I ever done in my life that I wasn't prepared for, but like I'm here now and I got to do them. And that feeling, you understand that, you can connect with that character there. And one of the things, that's why I'm starting my new series, and you're going to be one of probably the top thing, episode number 3. I'm focusing on your GCD character. That the characters are what we need to be focusing on in marketing. It's because that's what it's all about. Why did Tolkien tell the story? Oh yeah, he has a cool book of Middle Earth. If it was all about Middle Earth, the only thing anyone would ever read would be the Silmarillion. Because you get all the Middle Earth that you want in the Silmarillion, but that's never been what it's about. It's those characters. It's everything that's in that. That's what's important. What can we leave people on? Is there anything you wanted to get out in this episode that we didn't manage to get to? Apparently, we're going to have just a running thing of Daniel coming on the show because there's just too much shit to talk about with you.
I have that effect on people, apparently. I can't really think of anything. I mean, it was technically supposed to be about the stories, so
we did talk about the stories, I feel like.
Yeah, we did. We just got lost in the weeds a little bit.
Well, let's put it this way. The conversations that were sparked through those stories should tell you all that you need to know about the readability of those stories. The fact that there's actual conversation to be had is why you read those stories in the first place. Certainly the way I read stories.
That's where I approach writing. Is I have a question and I'm going to answer that question through these characters. So that I'm going to put these people up against this conundrum and see what happens. Sometimes it goes in a completely different direction than where I intended it to go, but I've learned something by the end of that process that I didn't know before, and that's fascinating to me as a creator, is learning more about the world. And one of the things I guess that I'll leave the conversation with about my books is that I don't make tropes, I make people. And I feel a little bad about doing so sometimes because of all the crazy stuff that they have to go through. But when I design an MC or a supporting cast character, like actively design, not the ones that just pop up suddenly, like Athena, um, when I design them as close to a complicated human being as I possibly can. It's not just this guy's a superhero and he wants to help people. You know, he has a family and he's has experiences and he has uh, personal flaws of character that go well beyond what's necessary for the story and may not even come up. If I don't write another book, you'll never know about them. But I put them in there when I design the person, and it influences every single aspect of their actions. That's I go a little too hardcore into it, I think, maybe. It's like my version of Tolkien style exposition is going way too deep into a character, but it works for me and it helps me create someone that I can answer the question with.
Well, and that will give me one last question before we get you out of here. Do you feel like that undercuts the idea of archetypes a little bit? That you go and you go and do so much work on the characters themselves that you're almost undermining your own goal of not making them overly complicated and dark with tragic backstories.
I maybe, but then it's not necessarily a dark and tragic backstory. I don't think everyone is inherently dark and tragic. I think that the world is full of a wide variety of people, and I've met so many of them at this point in my long life of 45 years that you could walk down the street, and if you spent 10 minutes in discussion with every single person you meet as you're walking down that one block, you'll find a lot more than just dark and tragic. You know, it's all in how you see it.
So how about this? Maybe the issue isn't in like the characterization and archetypes so much as it is they're forgetting about this one thing that comic books had in the early days that they just don't anymore, and that's hope. And maybe that's is the lack of hope in comics perhaps is that what causes the lack of hope in the real world, or is that a product of there being no hope in the real world? That we've just so got rid of hope as a people that we can't envision a world with that anymore.
Well, that's a chicken and the egg conundrum right there. I mean, it seems entirely possible. We could go on for like an hour just talking about that specifically, but I think people. I mean, everything was created by us as far as comics is concerned, created by people, and the original creators did so with hope in mind. The new creators do so without hope in mind. So if the creator has no hope, how are they going to incorporate that into their story? It's coming from them. It's like we were talking about the author. You learn about the author because they're the one that's writing the story and it's coming from their perspective.
For everybody out there, plenty of things for you to think about in today's episode. Where can we send people there, in Daniel?
You can find me on X, Twitter, Twix, if you follow Royce, at Mr. DP Riley. My DMs are open if you ever have any questions about your own writing journey. That's part of what I do in my professional career. And on Amazon.com, you can find me under Daniel P. Riley in the author search, where most of my books are located. And they're also wherever books are sold, bookstores and whatnot. I went pretty wide with my spread, and I shall continue to do so until I can no longer write.